be an outcast. I'll kill you.
No. You'll be a god to them.
My son was in the bus. He saw what Clark did.
You're the answer, son. You're the answer to are we alone in the universe?
Right, welcome everyone. This is episode 38 of the Comics in Motion podcast. I'm Chris Phelps, and my good friend and co-host is Mr. Dave Horrocks.
Hi, Chris, and hi, guys. Welcome to the Comics in Motion podcast. What we like to do here is we like to review media like movies, TV shows, and games that are based on comic books. Myself, I'll be looking at the media from the perspective of a long-time comic book fan, and my co-host Chris will be reviewing mainly from that media perspective, and we'll walk through our given choice of the week and give our different thoughts on it. What we also like to do is we also like to spoil the hell out of everything. So if you haven't watched our choice of the week, then proceed with caution. Now, Chris, we've had a few trailers coming out this week.
Oh, yes.
So the first one, well, a bit of trailers, bit of news. So the first one is X-Men Dark Phoenix, trailer dropped.
Yeah.
And then a day or two after, I can't quite remember back now, was it a day or two? But they announced it's getting pushed back yet again. So it's going to get pushed back to June next year. So this one, and along with New Mutants as well, which is the other kind of X-Men spin-off, just keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And it does make you wonder, you know, are they lining this up with the, you know, to join up with the MCU in some way?
Yeah, they could be as well. And also, they've dropped the X-Men from the name, haven't they? It just says Phoenix now, and then the X at the end of Phoenix, he's just got the circle around it, you know, to sort of drop in there that it's an X-Men origin film. So obviously all the X-Men are in it, aren't they? The, you know, the earlier ones, Michael Fassbender and stuff, and
yeah,
all the other guys. But yeah, I watched it. I thought it was quite interesting because obviously it's, you know, Phoenix is one of the most sort of polarizing characters in that world, really, most powerful ones as well. So I'm quite interested in how she's going to be portrayed. And the girl out of Game of Thrones is a great actress. So I'm hoping
Sophie Turner.
Yeah, I'm hoping she does it justice. She's been good in the sort of more as a peripheral character, hasn't she, in these other X-Men like First Class and stuff. So no, quite interesting. What did you think of it, Dave?
Well, I think it's, the first thing, so Dark Phoenix is one of the best story arcs I've read. You know, so it's fantastic. Certainly one of the best X-Men arcs. Watched the trailer and I just thought, you know what, could take or leave this. I just didn't really see anything because what they've done, X-Men 3 is generally hated by most people, but they did kind of introduce that concept of the Dark Phoenix in that, and I looked at this, I thought, well, are they actually going to give us anything new? And again, I think part of my mind is already in reboot mode. I'm already thinking, well, they're going to shelve all these actors probably and pick a load of new ones and before they introduce them to the MCU. So I don't know. Obviously, I'm going to watch it, but not overly impressed with the trailer, if I'm honored, if I'm honest. So yeah, but we'll see. I mean, the trailers can be a bit hit and miss, you know, sometimes. So
yeah, I think as well, it's giving it up the story away, isn't it? No, I must admit, I'm with you, Dave. If I'm being completely honest, that it's not something I'm absolutely looking forward to or like on the edge of my seat. I love the earlier X-Men characters. I love Michael Fassbender. He's absolutely fantastic as Magneto. James McAvoy's good as Professor X. I love that dynamic. The relationship is on a par with Sir Ian McKellen's and Patrick Stewart's, you know, and obviously the modern day X-Men. I just hope that if they do move over to the MCU, them two characters are preserved, if I'm being completely honest. And they do move over, whether there's some sort of time traveling involved, so they become up to present day. I'm not sure, but I think they're going to lose something because obviously Sir Ian McKellen makes Magneto what he is, but I think Michael Fassbender does a great version of him, or his own version, but doesn't move too far away from the origins of the character as he's older. So I don't know. I'm with you. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to go to the cinema to watch it, if I'm being honest. Yeah, that was it really. But one, sorry, Dave, go on.
Let's see. I mean, it's in the back of my mind. I keep thinking, you know what? Are they actually just gonna bin this? You know,
Yeah,
with the takeover and everything. I think probably they won't. But I don't know. I could certainly see it with New Mutants that they might just say, you know what? Let's not bother with this.
yeah, they could do. They could do, to be fair. But Dave, I've got to say, my favourite trailer this week, I know there's only a couple, the Bumblebee.
Yeah.
Absolutely lap this up. And obviously, we're of the same age. I love the Transformers. The Transformers are the old school 1980s original cartoon stroke figurine characters that I had in my house. You know, Optimus Prime, they're very square, very
Yeah.
the way they are, Soundwave, all these other characters that were all there from like the 80s. And obviously, it doesn't mean a lot to some of the younger people and myself and you that they watch them cartoons. But for me, absolute fanboy 101. And the fact that he's just a Beetle as well, and he's not a Camaro or anything else, absolutely loving it. Absolutely. I'm not saying it's going to be amazing because obviously we don't know, but I thought the trailer, I was more into that trailer than I was the Phoenix one, without a doubt.
I have to agree with you. I mean, like you say, it was going right back to those original cartoons, those original toys. And, you know, let's face it, when we were kids, never thought we'd get a live action kind of Transformers movie. And it was that Citroen advert, wasn't it? That kind of where you had the car and it turned into a robot and it was dancing a bit. And I think that got people thinking, oh, think about it. Could do proper Transformers here. But what we got on the screen was always left you a little bit wanting more, didn't it? Because although it looked pretty cool, like for the action scenes, you can't tell what's going on most of the time. It's just a bunch of metal, and you know who's the goodies, who's the baddies. But like you say, that Optimus Prime shape and Soundwave just looked amazing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really that bothered about this one coming out, to be honest, but having seen that trailer, I'm like, oh, I need to see this one and see it on the big screen as well. This looks like it could be the first Transformers movie that, you know, we wanted to get in the first place.
I agree. And I do agree with that, because funny enough, after watching Bumblebee, I sort of did a bit of a tour de force of YouTube, which I do with my wife's watching all the British soaps and stuff. And I spent 2 hours watching some of the old the recent Transformer stuff. And I've got them all on, you know, Blu-ray collector's edition. And it's so funny you mention that, Dave. And I'm not just saying that to go along with you. I've been to the cinema to watch all of these films, especially the one in 3D. I think it was the third one. And I genuinely was the same, thinking, I'm not sure who's who, other than the bit of red where you know it's Optimus Prime. It's just like a mess of metal, isn't it? Fighting, and even then, he's not. I don't know. I don't know if it's because we've been spoiled with the Avengers stuff and the like more human characters. But even I was watching it thinking, I don't seem as good as I remember it. I'm only going back a couple of years, so it's very true that you hit on that. I think this actual trailer could hit a beat with a lot of older Transformers fans like myself and you.
Yeah, I hope so. And final bit of news from this week, and I don't even know exactly what the news is going to be, but it looks like there's going to be a Deadpool movie that's released this December, and as of yet, it's untitled. So seems to be a little bit of speculation about what is it actually going to be. Is it going to be a PG-13 version of Deadpool, you know, with Ben Savage narrating over the top or something, you know, just people trying to interpret. So Ryan Reynolds had tweeted out that image of him being the grandpa in the Princess Bride scene. So I don't know what that's going to be, but it'll be quite interesting. I'd be a bit surprised if they just did a PG-13 version of Deadpool 2. It seems a bit odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I know obviously Ryan Reynolds has got his, you know, he's got a finger on the pulse when it comes to social media and fan interaction and that. Maybe they've filmed this simultaneously. I haven't got a clue. I just don't know what's. When I saw it this morning, I thought it was a wind up. Because obviously on our Comics in Motion Twitter, we follow obviously a lot of the movie and comic book based people out there, don't we, as well as the creators. And I saw it and I thought, I'm thinking, well, it's not April 1st, so what the heck is this all about? So I'm with you. I totally don't know what to expect, and that could be a good thing, Dave, to be fair.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a Brucey bonus, isn't it? I mean, I wasn't expecting anything. I mean, to be honest, even if it is a PG-13, I'll take my kids to watch it.
Yeah,
because they like the iconography of Deadpool and everything, but obviously I'm not going to take them to watch it. So if it's that, great. You know, it means the kids can watch it. If it's something new, brilliant. Then we'll have something new to review then.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a great point, Dave. A great point. And I think as well, I don't know whether being a 13 would do it justice. Knowing how good the films are and it plays on that adult theme, I'm not sure. But I probably will go and watch it. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Chris, do you want to run through our sponsor message?
Of course. Today's episode, again, is sponsored by our good friends and collaborators, Sudio. If you get yourselves over to www.sudio.com, if you want headsets or headphones, any sort of audio equipment for listening on, please get a look at their range. And if you put in Comics in Motion podcast 15 and anything you like at the order screen, you'll get 15% off courtesy of ourselves. Give them a follow. They're a great company and there's loads of great products.
Fantastic. Cheers, Chris. And if you do like listening to the show, we'd really appreciate it if you could get across to whichever podcast catcher you're using, so Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, whatever, and drop us a 5-star review. And that really helps us to grow our audience and grow the podcast as well. Now, Chris, one bit of news that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was more around Superman. And who's going to play Superman? So our choice of the week this week, we decided we were going to look at something else, and then we decided, oh, you know what, let's go and do Man of Steel, seen as it might be Henry Cavill's swan song. But did you actually see his little video that he put on Instagram?
Yeah, it's funny because obviously you dropped me the line on it saying, have you seen it? And I'd literally watched it this morning. It's the one where he's got the Krypton training shirt and he's got the little Superman encased in sort of like, I don't understand. I mean, I know his dog's called Kal, isn't it? Like Kal-El and stuff. So he's well in for the actual, part of Superman. So I don't know. I don't know what you got out of it, Dave. I couldn't make out what was going on.
I think I got out of it Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. I watched it. I'm like, what's all that about? So I don't know. I don't know what it's supposed to mean. I suspect, he's just trying to demonstrate he has a love of the character. Now, I've not seen anything official, but rumor has it, that he's not going to be playing Superman anymore. Behind the scenes, it sounds like he's just got frustrated with waiting for the next movies to come along.
Yeah.
And so, and I think Warner Brothers have changed directions a few times, and they keep delaying the follow-up, solo movies for Superman. So it seemed odd to me that he'd just take a different project, he'd go with this Witcher project instead. But if you believe what you read, then that's what it is, and it's just because he doesn't want to give it up, but keeps getting messed around with when the project's actually going to start. So who knows? Touch wood. Hopefully they can resolve it. But when I saw that he'd posted this thing on Instagram, I thought, oh right, is he going to issue a rebuttal or something? No, just some cryptic weirdness.
As only an actor or actress will do, Dave. Yeah, you're damn right.
Yeah.
So, Dave, what have we got comic book wise today for Man of Steel?
Well, we've already been through. Well, we did Superman 1 and 2. We did a bit of comic background there, didn't we? I thought today we'd have a look at General Zod.
Oh, good.
So General Zod first appeared in Adventure Comics 283 back in 1961. So he's a Silver Age character. If you think Superman came around in the late 30s, didn't he, in that Action Comics #1. So it's quite a bit later. And basically, he's not too dissimilar from the Zod that we know, the Terrence Stamp Zod. So he was basically a military leader, and he tried to take over Krypton in a failed coup. got caught and then was sentenced to 40 years in the Phantom Zone. Now, after he'd served his time, Superman released him, and being the pesky so-and-so, the little rapscallion that he is, then he tries to take over Earth. And so Superman has to oppose him, and then he sends him back off to the Phantom Zone again. Now, in 1985, DC had a crossover event called Crisis on Infinite Earths. And what they wanted to do from there, again, they were trying to simplify everything. And they wanted to make sure that Superman had his status of being the last Kryptonian. So people liked, characters like the Zod character, but they had to... They had their hands tied essentially by editorial. So even characters like Supergirl, Power Girl, Krypto the dog, all of these things could no longer be Kryptonians. So what writers did do is they created these different versions of General Zod, but none of them really stuck at all. Now, in 2006, there was a storyline which I've mentioned before on this podcast, Superman Last Son. And I mentioned it before because it was written by a guy called Jeff Johns and Richard Donner. And basically, then we have a Kryptonian Zod, and he does return back to the comics. And, that was one kind of event, if you like. Now, I mentioned last week about the New 52. Again, another attempt by DC just to simplify everything and reboot their universe. And then in there, they reimagined Zod's origin. So they changed around his origin a bit. But essentially, as an adult, he's essentially the same person. So that's a little bit about General Zod. Again, if we get into his alternate characters, it gets very convoluted and messy. So, Chris, have you got any movie background for us?
Of course. Now, this one, Dave, it's a British-American venture. So we've got DC Entertainment, Legendary Pictures, and Syncopy as well, which it's all like made under the Warner Brothers banner. It was supposed to be, which it is, the first installment. Now, obviously, we like the MCU. It's nice and quick, rolls off the tongue, but the DC EU doesn't really trip for me, Dave. So I'm just going to call it the DC Extended Universe because I don't think either of them make much sense. And I'm supposed to be copying a bit of Marvel. Films directed by Zack Snyder, and all hail the king. It was written by David S. Goyer, Dave.
Legend.
Yeah, when I saw it, when I was researching, I was thinking, oh, David's going to be going. So anyway, obviously it stars Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Michael Shannon plays General Zod, Costner, Diane Lane. Diane Lane was in an older film that we reviewed, Dave.
Yeah.
Judge Dredd, that was it. Lawrence Fishburne, obviously we crossed over with Ant-Man into the MCU, and Russell Crowe. Now, this is like a reboot of the Superman series. You had the 2006 Superman Returns, which I actually quite like, with Brandon Routh. I've got that as well on DVD. I thought that was quite an extension of the original Superman with Christopher Reeve, which it was. This was a total origin, darker portrayal of the Man of Steel as such. Now, it started off in 2008, where Warner Brothers were basically offered it out for pitching from screenwriters, directors, comic book creators, and said, look, come back with whatever, what you've got. And there was a couple of sort of iterations they were looking at, story arcs they were going to take, but they obviously took the legend of David S. Goyer's main storyline. I'm going to keep saying that, Dave. I know you're muted going, shut up, Chris. But anyway.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Well, it explains a lot, and we'll get into that when we get into the review.
Yeah.
But...
And a lot of making this film, Dave, is centers on a bit of controversy, to be fair. Now, obviously, in 2009, there was a court ruling. Jerry Siegel, the original creator of Superman, that his family took them to court, Warner Brothers, regarding Superman, and they wanted the copyright back, which they did get back through the court ruling, but the court ruled that they wouldn't get any royalties for anything that was being created from the moment they give up the rights to like present day. So like stuff like Superman Returns, any of the comic book stuff, any of the cartoon stuff, they couldn't get any back royalties. But going forward, obviously his estate gets half of the royalties for any sort of profit made on the Superman character and any sort of iterations of it. But due to this, the court ruling, which I find a bit bizarre, Dave, said that there had to be a Superman film in production by 2011. Now, obviously, the film didn't come out till 2013. Let me say that again. The film didn't come out until 2013, but obviously it was in production for 2 years. One of the things as well, Dave, was interesting. They had to run it simultaneous with Christopher Nolan because he was doing The Dark Knight Rises as well. Now, we know later on down the line that Ben Affleck takes over from Christian Bale, but I honestly, the fanboy in me wishes that Christian Bale was still on board playing The Dark Knight, as we know from these later films personally. Zack Snyder was hired as a director. I mean, he was hired for the director before the film even started production in like 2010. A lot of when it was filmed was around Chicago, Vancouver, Plano, Illinois. So it's quite a wide range. Usually they take them over to the UK, as we've seen with the Batman stuff and that, but it was actually all filmed around Canada and America, this one. They actually created the whole Krypton and the set on some old warehouses in Illinois. So I thought that was quite good because most of, like I said before, most of the stuff goes over to the UK. It was released on the 14th of June, 2013. Now, it was released on 2D and 3D and obviously IMAX as well. I went to see it in 3D IMAX. Now, Christopher Nolan didn't want it in 3D. And Zack Snyder, they actually said, no, we're not doing it. But you can sort of upscale it to 3D, but we're not going down the route of 3D cameras and stuff because it creates a lot of problems down the line with the film so dark and the CGI and that. So they just totally went against that. But on sort of pre-production and that and pre-release, they then transposed it into 3D, which I thought was quite good. Financially wise, it made 668 million worldwide, which gave them a profit of 46 million. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but DVD and Blu-ray sales alone, it made $111 million in profit. So the film made nearly 170 million, 160 million roughly in profit. So there was always going to be films after it. So it was seen as a financial success. That doesn't coincide what the reviews were though, Dave, because review-wise, it's mixed. It's at 55% on Rotten Tomatoes and 6.2 on IMDb as well. So it's very much, you're either into Superman or you're not, which I've got a feeling the podcast today is going to be like that. You know, I'm an absolute Superman fanboy over and over. One of the things to note as well, which I thought was quite good, is they dropped the trunks from Henry Cavill's Superman suit because...
Matron.
They tried the best to try and get it included. They just said there's no way a modern suit you would even go down that route. Obviously, as kids, it was always a joke. When it put your underpants over your jeans, you were Superman. Yeah. So it's something that they just thought in the modern era, they couldn't do anything to do it justice. It just looked stupid. Even the 2006 Superman, which I've watched recently, it does look a bit odd, you know.
We discussed this in the very first podcast, didn't we? It was from the old strongmen that you had around the 30s and earlier than that, you know, had the trunks on and that. So that's kind of where that design belongs. Yeah.
And one other thing to note as well is Michael Shannon, who plays General Zod, his whole outfit is CGI. They said there was no physical way he could play that part with the amount of weight that cost. They created the costume, but it was too heavy for him. He just couldn't move. It was like logistically, it was not something he could portray the part of the character of Zod. So all that was added after was retrofitted onto the final production. And that's one of the things with the 3D as well, because it would have caused a lot of issues with the 3D stuff. So yeah, quite interesting, Dave. And that's it really for, a couple of things actually, sorry. Henry Cavill's performance as Superman was mixed reviews, which probably goes hand in hand with the actual review scores. A lot of them said he was a bit stiff and lacked the charisma of Superman. I'm sure we'll get into that in the review, but that's something that was something, that people sort of picked up on. But in the same respect, the actual audience reviews are really high. They're like A+, Dave. So it's quite interesting that the reviews were so mixed, but the actual fans and the cinema goers liked it a lot. So yeah, and that's it really for the movie stuff, Dave.
Very good, very good. Should we get into our review then?
Let's go.
Okay, now, Chris, I'm not going to put my cards on the table too early, but I think you might have to help me out get through this one. Okay. It took me 2 sit-ins to get through this.
Oh, no.
So, I guess, first of all, well, what we're going to do, so it's quite a long film, isn't it? So we basically got, we'll cover the major plot points, but we're not going to probably walk through in granular detail. So we start off in Krypton, don't we?
Yeah.
Now I put this on and I thought, right, I'll get the kids in. I kind of forgot how the film opens up with old Superman's mum giving birth there.
Yeah.
Oh, bang about. Fast forward this bit. But yeah, so you kind of I'd watched this when it first came out, as I'm probably gonna do with most of the major comic book movies, to be honest. But I'd forgotten a lot of it, a huge amount of it.
Yeah.
I forgot we'd spent quite so much time in Krypton. And I certainly forgot this whole idea that, natural birth or natural creation and birth is kind of outlawed. And you've almost got this. It really reminded me of The Matrix, where, kids are kind of babies are grown in little pods and they're genetically engineered. I'd just forgotten all of this.
Yeah, I think as well, Dave. I like the fact, for me personally, that there's an origin to this side, and actually Jor-El gets a mention, because I do like Russell Crowe as Jor-El. I must admit, he obviously his peak of his career was always going to be Gladiator, and ever since then, for me, he's always just I've never hit anything that I've really wanted to watch, if that makes sense. I've watched the boxing one he did of oh gosh, his name. The boxing one he did was quite good, and there's a couple of other parts he's done of note, but nothing that stands out that I go, oh wow. But this, I really like him as Jor-El. I think it suits him better. He's better when he's this mean and sort of moody guy as such, and I like it at the start, but I must admit there's a few things that are a bit far fetched with the world of sort of Krypton and that. And I know this modern era of filmmaking and the dark sort of deception of this film deception. This, yeah, perception even, Dave. We'll go down that route. But yeah, there's a few bits that are a bit naughty, like Zod spitting at the council and stuff, which I thought was a bit intense. So it sets it up totally different in the first 10, 15 minutes to anything we've seen, as you say, the birth and everything. And even the fact that he stabs Jor-El as well. Zod kills him, doesn't he? It's his oldest friend, but they're obviously at like sort of political loggerheads, which has sort of brought this coup on, hasn't it, where Zod's trying to take over Krypton and stuff and kills Jor-El. So it's...
Yeah, I mean, even before that, so General Zod, he's this military badass, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I thought with this one, I'm afraid, Chris, it's going to be difficult for me to just ignore the 78 Superman. So yeah. I'm going to keep going back to that. But I would say better for this one, for this version of General Zod, you could kind of see where he was coming from. His intentions, he wasn't just being power hungry, was he? You could see what he thought was doing was the right thing. But he's been in the military pretty much all his life, and you've got Jor-El, who's a scientist, and then they're going at it. They're fighting each other, and Jor-El is beating him, and I'm like, oh come on, there's no way. You've got this scientist, and he's holding his own against someone who's been in the military and fighting all their lives. So I didn't like this. I mean, for me, I thought we spent ages on Krypton. So again, if we go back to that origin, so the original movie, Superman 1 and 2, right? General Zod snaps a red crystal, and that's his military coup. Well, actually, I'll say as a positive thing for this one, we got to see a lot more of that, didn't we? We got to see, it felt real. And there's lots going on and stuff, but yeah, so I would say that is a positive thing. But like I say, the fight between Jor-El and Zod, I just didn't like at all.
No, and obviously, Zod, they take her, they kill him, they get arrested, don't they? It's just, they banish them to the Phantom Zone, which obviously we know that's something that does happen, and it beats the sort of Superman 1, Superman 2, our original. If anyone's not listening, please go back to episode 1 and 2 of the podcast as a comparison to this to see how far we've sort of gone with the Superman stuff, because this is like, it's 36 episodes later, we're doing another Superman film, aren't we? So it's quite interesting to compare what our thoughts are. But I must admit, Dave, now put it into context, my situation. I've said it, I'm open about Superman. I'm watching this because, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet or, saying better than I'm not. We've got a detached house. One of the reasons was because I hate neighbours. But beside that, I've got a sound plate, which I said to you when we were talking about it. And when I want to watch a film, I put that on full blast. Now, my LG sound plate, Dave, sounds like the cinema. I'm not exaggerating. It's better than anything, Bose, anything. It's amazing, the sound. And I had it on full blast, Blu-ray on, the 4K Blu-ray, everything. So it's absolutely, for me, I am in my element. And these scenes are fantastic. But I have picked up on a few things, Dave, and I must admit, I've not thought about the Zod thing with Jor-El before. But as you say that, it's like, yeah, that does actually make sense. How has he overcome this guy who's just fought and trained and supposed to be like an absolute elite combat, veteran? And he's just supposedly someone who works in a test tube laboratory, and he's done him over. So, yeah, I never thought about it like that, to be fair. I mean, one thing I would say, though, Dave, at least he's not done a Brando, which I can actually say in this episode now as a comparison. At least he does get involved, Russell Crowe, in what's going on. But, yeah.
I think you've got not a green suitcase or a green bagel or something.
No, and I think that's a great point, to be fair. And then, obviously, we get the thing when it goes to Earth now. Clark.
Hold on, because I just want to touch on as well that, again, so for me, your mate Goya, just sloppy writing, right? So you're Goya's fanboy of one. So
no. Only because I know it winds you up.
I know. So what I thought was handled a lot better just in terms of the script in the first one. So when Zod gets banished, he talks about, he's betrayed because Jor-El has the final vote and then votes to send General Zod off, doesn't he?
Yeah.
In here, he's already killed Jor-El.
Yeah.
Jor-El's dead. And then he's saying to, Superman's mum, I'll find him. He's talking about this kid that they'd sent off. And it's like, I'll find him. And he says it about 10 times, it seems like, I'll find him. And it's like, let it go. What's your beef? You should be more focused on going to the Phantom Zone, to be honest. What's your grudge?
Yeah.
So you tried the military coup. I just thought it was sloppy. I thought the fact that, in the first one, he said, I'll come after you and your heirs. That, for me, in that simple statement, you see, he wants to destroy everything about Jor-El. Whereas with this, the way the story went, I just didn't really believe it. But he keeps saying it and keeps saying it until he gets swallowed up by this this kind of goo that rises from his feet. And then, how can I put this, Chris? He gets jettisoned off to the Phantom Zone in a big space penis.
And as you alluded to last week, Dave, it was almost a Dick Grayson. Yeah. We'll call it a Dick Grayson from now on. But yeah, I know what you mean.
What the hell is that all about? I mean, of all the designs, I'm looking at this, and obviously it's not just General Zod. You've got a few of them going. I'm like, what am I watching here?
Well, I must admit, I've not seen any of this, Dave. And I know I'm Mr. Critical. I've definitely got my trunks on the outside with this one. My absolute Superman fanboy glasses are on with this. There's nothing. I mean, that with Jor-El, I'll give you that. I've not even noticed that, to be fair. So, yeah, no, I don't know. I honestly don't. And again, that's probably what the mixed reviews are, Dave, for that reason.
Because... Well, when you watch it again, just bear in mind what I've said there. And it looks odd. So, okay, and now back to you. So we head back to Earth.
Yeah, so we get to Earth and we get a little origin story of sort of Clark, don't we? He gets down there. Martha and Jonathan save him, save him, obviously, but they rescue him, don't they, and take him under their own. Now, we did say this before in the other Superman review. It still doesn't make any sense how a couple can just take a child, raise him, no one queries it, and the end of the story, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff you could go to, into the story of a child and that and how they've come upon him, but they have, and he's there, and that's just a Superman issue, not actually anything to do with the film. But I do like, Dave, there's a few scenes in this bit where it's about a 15-20 minute origin story, isn't there, of Clark, where it flashes current day to when he was a child and stuff. And I love the bit on the oil rig. That's absolutely brilliant, where he rescues. He's like a fisherman, isn't he? And he's supposed to have just started a job as a fisherman. When I don't know what he's doing. He's supposed to be out and about somewhere, and he's got a job, and he gets saved by this guy. Which the only thing I would say, Dave, he gets saved on the boat, is the guy grabs him and saves him, but he's Superman, isn't he? So how has he dived and pushed him out of the way from that fish hitting him in the cage? And just daft things like that. I like overanalyze stuff like that, but it doesn't take me away. And then you get the money shot where he rescues the guys on the oil rig, and he's underneath the water and all this, and he gets on, and then he comes on the side, doesn't he, to get the clothes off the washing line. And he absolutely looks like he's been taking a lot more than protein shake. Oh, good old Henry. I'm telling you that for now.
I think, yeah. So just on that point, I think he's just, he's a specimen, obviously, isn't he? But I think he's just a bit too bulky.
Yeah.
I think he could have leaned out a little bit more there. I just think he does look like a bodybuilder there, doesn't he?
Well, to be fair, he was actually bigger than that, Dave. He's a bit like what Chris Hemsworth in the first 4 film. He got that big that they measured him up for the suit and give him like an inch either way, and his muscles and his chest and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came to production, I know we mentioned this in some of the other podcasts, they had to give him another 3 or 4 weeks off where he had to slim down because he was just too big. And I think Henry Cavill's the same. Now, I've seen the training videos. There's a lot of them. And I'm not sure, if I'm being completely honest, he looks fantastic, obviously, but I'm not sure whether there is a bit of CGI there on his body, because he hasn't got massive legs. He's never been bodybuilding. You can see that. He's obviously working his upper half, a bit like what Hugh Jackman did for X-Men. The old gym cliche, gym prejudice of, you've missed leg day and all that stuff. And it's very much that sort of build he's got. And I know Hugh Jackman did it for the simple reason that Wolverine always wore tight, skinny jeans, didn't he? That was his character. So he didn't want himself getting too big, right, from the waist down. Obviously, there might have been certain parts from the waist down he wanted bigger, but...
I don't know. Not to get into a PT type podcast, but I think some people... So I cannot grow my legs at all, right? And Hugh Jackman, I'm sure he was deadlifting about 1,000 pounds or something daft like that. And there's plenty of videos on YouTube.
I've seen him, yeah.
Deadlifting a lot, but he's got these little tiny legs, hasn't he? So, to do that, he's got a lot of strength in his legs, but he just doesn't have a lot of bulk. And I don't know. It strikes me. I think certainly with the calves, a lot of it is about genetics.
Yeah.
If you look at the footballer Shaqiri, he's got calves bigger than my thighs, but I don't think that's because he's working on them, 40 hours a week or whatever. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if Cavill and Jackman, I don't know if it's because they don't work out on their legs or it's just, just genetics.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it like I've got an absolute bodybuilding physique myself. So it's more a aesthetics thing, I think, with the character, because the way Henry Cavill looks when he pulls up from getting out of the water is the size of the fake Batman suit that Ben Affleck's wearing, because there's not a cat in hell's chance that Ben Affleck looks like that. I know he looked good and he got in a certain amount of shape, but he doesn't look anything like. But Henry Cavill actually looks like that suit when it goes on him is the suit. He is the suit, like Hugh Jackman was with Wolverine. That is his physique. But just for that little bit on when he comes up, it looks like they've made him even wider than what he actually physically was. I'm not sure, but anyway. Take it away from it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and can I just say as well? So Christopher Nolan was quite heavily involved at the start of this, wasn't he?
Yeah.
even before Zack Snyder got involved. And I think even at this point where he's going nicking them clothes, you get a taste of what the movie's going to be like. So the color palette that they've used, again, comparing to the 78, obviously it's 70s movies, so it's very different anyway, but it's just a very bright movie. Whereas this one, it's like someone's put the color right down on your TV. All the colors drained out of the whole movie, and I thought that was quite Snyder-like. And Nolan-like was very this non-linear kind of storytelling, so you've got a bit of the present day, zoom back at him as a kid, bit more of the present day, zooming back, it's just, I thought it was a bit too much. And I have to say, because we started off and it's like going into the deadliest catch, isn't it? When he's a fisherman. Why is he a fisherman? He seems to be on this journey. It's like, the old 70s Hulk TV show where David Banner just wanders around and, ends up getting in a few scrapes wherever he goes. It seemed to be like that. He just seemed to be wandering around bits of America, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because there's a scene that I do go to on YouTube. I like watching it. And it sort of goes hand in hand with that. Is the scene where he's now working. He's gone from stealing his clothes. He's working in a bar, and there's this trucker. Yeah. Now the trucker, I don't think they cast him very well, because the trucker's not a match for Henry Cavill anyway. He's obviously groping this girl. He comes over. The guy must be about. Henry Cavill isn't Christopher Reeve. He's not 6'3", 6'4". Henry Cavill must be 5'10" at the most. Now, obviously, they make him look bigger on screen, because even against like Ben Affleck and that, I think 6'4", he's smaller than him, with Batman and that. Now, that's the only thing I say Henry Cavill is, I honestly think they needed someone like, say, the height of a Christopher Reeve or Hugh Jackman for Superman. That's the only criticism I'd say, and that's not his fault. He's not tall enough, but I think if you're going to play that, Brandon Roth was the right height. He's that thin, lean look. So I think that's the only thing sometimes in the film, at certain angles, he doesn't look right, if that makes sense. There's a few scenes of Amy Adams where he's quite close to Lois Lane in height, really. So anyway, but that guy must be all of 5'3", 5'4", the trucker. He gives him a shove, throws a drink in his face. Obviously, you can see he's getting angry. He turns round and lobs the can at his head, doesn't he, and that, and he walks off. And then, well, I don't think the only thing, Dave, and it's great, and it's a funny scene as such, like not a funny, hilarious, but it's when the trucker then comes out later on thinking he's got one up on him, and he's absolutely just Christmas treed his truck, and he's just put it through a load of pylons and branches, and he's just wrecked this. And it's like, well, someone must have seen that or heard it. You don't just wreck. Even if they didn't, right? What happens next? Does the trucker just go, "Oh shucks"? Yeah. There's got to be a whole investigation, surely, hasn't there? He's going to be calling the police. What the hell's going on? And it just, I thought it was played for laughs, know. And this guy's got his comeuppance, but it's like, really? And I agree. He wasn't intimidating, nearly enough. They needed like a sea bass, from Dumb and Dumber or someone like that, someone like that who looked a bit more physically imposing. But yeah, I didn't like that bit with the truck. I think what that's supposed to be saying, isn't it? This is a slightly younger Clark, and he does have, he has a few anger issues to work out. I've got to say, Dave, there's two bits in the film that that doesn't work. Now, obviously, as we watch the film, Superman even says it, he's 33 years old, isn't he? Henry Cavill is pretty much 33 years old, isn't he? Whether he's usually they're a couple of years older, aren't they, than the part they're playing, but he's around about that age, 35, say. Is this scene where obviously with Martha and Jonathan there with Dog, and Clark's kicking off, and he's saying to like, "Jonathan, you're not my dad. You're just someone who's raised me." And all they've done is they flicked his hair forward, very Christian Bale-like, as in Batman Begins. They've knocked his voice up a few octaves, so he's a little bit falsetto. And he just looks exactly the same. And I'm just like, I must admit, David, it's always bugged me, because he just looks 30 in his mid-30s, and he's supposed to be obviously around about 20 years old in here or something, because it's another flashback scene. And we get this tornado. And for me, it makes no sense at all why Clark doesn't rescue his dad. I know he's saying, don't, you're going to ruin it and blah, blah, because we have a little interaction where Clark, he says to him when he rescues all his friends on the bus, and he says, well, should I have let him die? And he says to only Jonathan, well, maybe. But I don't think it really hit the nerve it was supposed to, if I'm being honest.
So I don't think there's a massive problem with the actors. I mean, I think there's some top, A-list actors in this.
Yeah.
Costner and Cabell, Diane Lane. They're all top actors. But there's a lot of this bit that I just didn't like. So the bit with he's basically telling him. So when we go back to young Clark and he saves everyone on the school bus,
yeah,
and then he's kind of having his Ken. What is it? Not it's Kent, isn't it? What's his first name?
Jonathan.
That's it. Jonathan Kent, he's sort of saying to him, no, you shouldn't have done that. You should be hiding who you are, because if people find out, not good things will happen, you'll end up dissected or whatever. I just thought to myself, what a terrible message.
Yeah.
It's just kids, hide away who you are.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone know, because if people find out, they might not like it, and you might not end up in a good place. I really didn't like that. And then the inference that well, maybe you should just let these kids die. I just thought I didn't play Jonathan off in a very good light at all. But when he's having a talk with him, and he's showing him his little space pod or whatever, he's sort of going on about, how, he's meant for greater things and this, building him up. But then he's also telling him to hide himself away as well. So just completely contradicting himself.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to blame it on the writing.
Yeah,
just really, really sloppy.
And you know what's mad though, Dave, and obviously people out there, and I'm sorry to cut across you, is I've come into this podcast, and I'll be completely honest, with a score in mind. And as we're talking about it, not because we're doing the politician thing and you're negotiating my mind to go, well, you've got to think like me. Far from that, but I am questioning now what this film. I've mentioned it on the podcast before. I hold it in such high esteem, and not that I shouldn't, because I'm enjoying it. But I do think, and we're not even probably halfway through. We're nearly halfway through. Whatever, reviewing actual subject matter is. I did go back to watching some bits of Superman 2 this week on YouTube after this, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I scored that as an Asgard, so it's like, I genuinely, I do think, and I agree, I do think these things going on here, that what you're picking up on isn't just me being a fanboy. There is stuff that I've got to hold my hands up and go, you know what, you're right. And I think as we're reviewing it, I think you're picking up on some great things.
Well, I don't want to change your enjoyment. It's just the way I'm seeing it, and I think certainly when we get to the end, I'm going to score it differently to you.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Where we went off onto that little tangent, we were talking about what happened with. So Jonathan, he goes back to save the dog, doesn't he? And I guess again. Just sloppy writing for me. It's just okay. So we need Jonathan to make a sacrifice. He's probably come up with that idea. Okay, so what can we do? He's not a bad person, so he goes to save the dog. But like you started to say there, why not? All right, there's other people around, but just say, look over there. Right, Superman's supposed to be as quick as the Flash, pretty much.
Yeah.
Go and save the dog quick. He didn't need to make that sacrifice, so I thought it was clunky the way it was kind of engineered. And like I say, probably started off with that idea. Okay, Jonathan has to die, and if he makes a sacrifice, that gives the hero, some trauma to deal with. So, start off with those two things. How could we make that happen? So, I just thought it was ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. I think, as I've just mentioned it, I agree that bit doesn't sit very well with me at all, and I think it's a shame because Kevin Costner's, I think, is playing quite a good Jonathan Kent. If I'm being honest, he has took a lot of origins from Smallville, which obviously with John Snyder, who was Bo Duke out of the Dukes of Hazzard, but he was quite a good Jonathan Kent in the series, and I think he's took that sort of sympathetic stance, the way he approached the acting of like, we really worried for him, and he's his son. They couldn't have a proper genetic child, so they've got this sort of gift from the gods as such, and he can see that he's going to become something, and I think that's good. There's like an inner turmoil in him, which I think is quite good. And at this point, we know the story. Jonathan dies, obviously, in the original Superman. He has a heart attack, doesn't he, on the farm? He's an old bloke. Costner's probably supposed to be sort of early 50s, I presume, mid 50s. So, yeah, no, I have no issue with him going. It's just the way he's going. I don't think that's true to the story of Jonathan Kent as such. But it's roughly placing the beat that he's just got his mum as he gets older and that. So, yeah interesting. And then, obviously, from there, we get a crossover section. The stuff we've just mentioned with Clark does run side by side with an assignment that Lois Lane has, where the ship is encased in like the Alaska. And, they mentioned Lois turns up on site and they're like, well, you've come a day early. And he's like, yeah, well, because I don't want you being prepared and stuff. And she's, she's trying to, I must admit, Amy Adams is good in this, but she's no Margot Kidder. That sort of tenacious, rough and ready, I'll take the world on feel, which you get with Margot Kidder, which I think is great, like the Eiffel Tower scenes, she'll put herself on the line, the helicopter falling off the side of the building in the first Superman. It doesn't really sit with me that she's an amazing Lois Lane. She's more of a support character, just taking the name of Lois Lane, if that makes sense.
That's interesting you say that, because I again, having grown up with the original Superman, with the original Margot Kidder, it's hard not to have a bias there. But I think she was stronger than the Margot Kidder Lois Lane. I think, and they sort of played her off as a, she was tenacious, but she was a bit of a dummy, and she couldn't spell. One of the very first lines out of that first movie is, "Oh, Lois, rapist only has one P in it."
Yeah.
And she was often that damsel in distress, wasn't she? She's been tenacious in Superman 2 when she's on the underside of the elevator, but she's still the damsel in distress who needs to be rescued. Whereas this version of Lois, she doesn't need to be rescued. In fact, later on, she more than holds her own. So it jars with me a little bit, because Amy Adams just doesn't look like I imagine Lois Lane to be.
Yeah.
And so that takes me away a little bit. But I do think she is written in a stronger way than the Margot Kidder version.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Good contrast from both of us, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just being blind, but yeah, sort of biased towards the original films. But no, it does think, and obviously she is on this sort of camp in Alaska, which apparently was actually filmed up in Vancouver, Dave, in warehouses and stuff. So as well, these scenes, it's not actually obviously in the snow, and they have a little line where they say, the ship is here, but it's encased in 20,000-year-old ice, which you find a bit bizarre. But anyway, the ship's there. She then just totally bypasses security, can just get onto the ship, no problem. Absolutely no issue there at all. Is there? Just sort of, it's not like
the Predator's not on there, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's not like she can get into the Eiffel Tower or anything just by passing off a bit of bad French with somebody. But yeah, she gets on there, and obviously the ship's sort of security activation drone type thing is ready to take her out, and Clark appears, doesn't he, and sort of saves the day, and she gets shot, but he cauterizes it. So obviously he's revealed his secret straight away. She doesn't know who he is, does she? She just knows of this, she's just come across this guy, so he's obviously not human. And then we get the whole thing, don't we, where he sort of kills the drone, smashes it up, and this leads on to him meeting Jor-El and becoming Superman as such.
Yeah, and so for me, a lot of this story is it plays out with the first Superman movies in mind. You know, there's a lot that is the same, isn't there? But it's like they're intentionally trying to make it different as well. Now,
Yeah.
in the older movies, obviously, Lois just meets Clark first, you know, and then there's these two distinct. She meets Clark, and then she meets Superman. And you know, part of the second movie is she's trying to piece together. Oh, this guy, if he sticks his glasses on, he's completely different. Well, here, it's she just meets this guy, you know, and he's neither Superman nor Clark, is he?
No.
She just meets him, and he's obviously got these powers and stuff. So it's interesting that they've just done away with that whole side story, you know, where she's trying to figure out his identity.
Yeah, and I think as well, Dave, that the whole mystique of will people find out he's Clark, as in even not just the films, Lois and Clark from the 90s with Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher, that was a great. Is she ever going to notice he's just got a pair of specs on? And at Smallville, he never wore glasses until the last maybe 15 minutes of the last episode. He was always Clark Kent. We know in Superman 1, he's Clark Kent and he doesn't wear glasses. But obviously, there's that whole transformation thing where he turns into Christopher Reeve, which is obviously nothing to do really with the film. It's just that he's supposed to have grown up on these little world sort of things. So I'm not sure. I agree with you. I think it's ruined a lot of who Superman is straight away. He's literally, she revealed his cards, which for me, growing up watching it a certain way and believing in the character a certain way, not having that sort of comic backstory, it doesn't sit completely well with me. I agree in that respect.
Well, he's just lucky, isn't he? That, you know, he reveals himself to someone who can keep a secret.
Yeah,
you know. So I don't know, just a little bit odd there. Now, I have to say at this point, Chris, I think this is where I turned it off because I'm just so bored. I'm like, oh God, this is terrible.
Yeah.
It was a hard slog to get here. So I just turned it off. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to come back to this tomorrow.
I must admit, Dave, I'm well in on it. I watched the whole thing in one sitting, I must admit.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I know you love it, and so you know that's why I say we're definitely going to score this differently. And even though I'd only watched it that first time, I think, you know what I thought was, you know, when Phantom Menace came out originally, so we never thought we'd get another Star Wars, did we?
No.
And then, you know, in the late 90s, Phantom Menace comes out, and you go to the cinema, and you watch it, and you think, yeah, I enjoyed that. Yeah. But you didn't really. You just sort of telling yourself, yeah, I really, really wanted to enjoy that. It's okay. You know, it's different, you know, so, and then it's only after you think, nah, it was rubbish, that.
Well, look at Solo. Same thing. Yeah.
Well, I kind of felt that initially when it was rubbish, but, or just not for me. So yeah, I remember enjoying this a lot more than I did on this rewatch.
Yeah.
But what was the reason I'm bringing that up is I've lost it a little bit here. So basically, Lois tracks Clark down. She says she's going to keep his secrets safe and what have you. And I've just got a mental block. How did Zod and Co. get out the Phantom Zone?
Well, they come with the world engine, don't they? I don't know whether.
I know they appear in Earth, and you know they're trying to.
Oh, I tell you why. It's because he's activated the ship. Because he's gone down and activated the ship
on Earth.
On Earth, that's they've obviously escaped from the Phantom Zone, and they realise that he is on Earth. Kal-El is on Earth. They've been looking for him, haven't they? Because they know that he's out there from the scenes at the start. So that's how they come to Earth.
Activating the ship on Earth has released Zod from the Phantom Zone.
No, Zod is already released from the Phantom Zone.
Right, okay.
They've escaped. He actually says they've manipulated the world engine and stuff to sort of free themselves from the Phantom Zone. Because obviously they're on the Phantom Zone. We know the Phantom Zone from Superman 1 and 2 as a sort of square that General Zod was stuck in with non-Ursula and stuff, whereas it's not. Obviously, in Smallville, the Phantom Zone's an island as such, or a planet full of absolute, debauchery.
Supergirl. Did you ever watch
Supergirl? Yeah. So it's an actual world that they live on, isn't it? That the banished, or like the scumbags are on there. So they actually engineer something while they're in the Phantom Zone, which they can escape from. And then once Kal-El, or Superman, whatever he's, Clark, activates the ship, they realise that's where he is. And then you get, obviously, Lois is tracking Clark, she finds him. And then we get this whole, which I do like, this thing, which was part of the marketing of the actual film, is the "You Are Not Alone." That was a website they created. General Zod's talking through the TV, and everyone's watching around the world, aren't they? And then he comes on, doesn't he, saying Kal-El, and all this, and he's after him. And he had the scene with his mum because he's back in Kansas now, and the TV blows up and that. But that's actually a really good. I remember at the time it was just a website with that video playing over and over again because people didn't realize it was Superman. They had like people on Reddit getting the origins and the actual backlot information of the website to find out that it was a property of Warner Brothers, and then going, oh, actually, it's to do with Superman. So it's quite a good marketing ploy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's why, Dave. That's why.
Very good, very good. I mean, the fact that in his message he says, he says something like he might be hiding amongst you or something like that. How does he know?
Exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, I've got it on. I've actually got it in the background now. I'm actually at that point. Funny enough,
right.
I've not touched it. I've been flicking forward. It's just on that scene now. Because what I don't understand with it though is obviously they've picked up on the radio waves of the world, haven't they? And the TV sort of signal things, and he's all blurred. I know they're not going to have a camera, so maybe that's what it's supposed to be. But I mean, it's not like he's going to a digital camera or something filming himself doing a selfie video. But I don't know whether that. I don't know if it has the impact.
If they've mastered interdimensional space travel, I think they could have HD TVs and cameras. Just seem a little bit odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does, to be fair. And obviously,
quick, Ursa, get the Betamax in there.
Yeah, because if, and the thing is very good, Dave. Very good. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that. You shut me up for once. That's good. But no, because obviously what he's done is very clever. Is everyone watching TV? So they've got this thing where they obviously, I don't know how they know people watch TV, but the whole world's talking about this person, this alien who's living amongst them needs to give himself up. Otherwise, they're going to destroy the world, aren't they? Because we've seen this ship coming to the Earth's atmosphere. The army have said, we don't know what that is. What it is. It's an alien ship.
Yeah.
So then we get this whole thing, don't they, where he goes to the desert and well, Lois gets captured first because for some reason the government know that she's sitting on information about Clark, don't they, or who the alien is. Yeah. She gets captured and then he gives himself up, doesn't he, in the desert with the army. And I like the little relationship he's got with the colonel. He's good in it as well. That sort of, they don't trust him, do they? And I think that's quite an interesting dynamic at first with him, because obviously they don't know who he is. We know him as Superman and what we've seen so far. And in this world, he's just an absolute threat, and he's a sort of world peace, domination, anything. Absolutely. They don't know what he's capable of, do they? So, but no, it's quite interesting. And I like the little scene where, she's sort of interviewing him, isn't she? Which I find a bit bizarre, that they've arrested her, but they've also got her interviewing sort of Kal-El in this where he's got handcuffs on, hasn't he, in the army barracks.
Yeah, I did like the little bit actually when he finally stands up. He's got the handcuffs on, and he stands up and he just pulls them apart as if they're cheese or something.
Yeah.
Like I could have got out of these at any time, Yeah,
because he does say a couple of good lines to the colonel and general, doesn't he? Like he starts talking to him through because he can see through they don't think he can see him. And it's just like, and I can also see the guys you've got through the other side with the stuff he's trying to sort of subdue him, aren't they? He said, nothing will stop me, and all this. So I thought that was quite good. You don't see the X-ray vision, but he's there as such, which I thought was quite good. It's sort of saying, well, these things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, good. It's good. It's good stuff. And I think as well, Dave, I've got to say, there's a bit coming up now because obviously we get this whole thing now where he gives himself up. The army have got to hand him over to General Zod, and Clark goes up and they take Lois, don't they? They're like, right, we meet like it's not even Ursa, is it? But the character's very much like Ursa, the female character, character, and she takes a dislike, and obviously to Lois Lane straight away. They take him up into his ship. He meets Zod, but then he has a problem where he's never been exposed to Kryptonian air, so he's spitting blood out Superman. He knocks himself out, doesn't he? Because he just can't breathe or adjust to it.
Again, credit where it's due. I think they did this bit a little bit better. Because again, and it's part of the whole Superman mythos, that kryptonite makes him weaker and whatever, which it's just always grated on me a little bit. It's like, but why? That's where he was born. It's like us, going to Mars and then someone bringing a rock, from Earth, and it's like, oh no, it's a rock from Earth. Well, that's where you're from. Whereas this, is all to do with the atmosphere that was making him sick. I just thought it was a little bit better the way they did it here. Yeah,
I do. I think it's more believable. And obviously, Lois has got some sort of a breathing apparatus, and they actually know that an Earthling will not be able to sort of take the atmosphere of their ship, which I find a bit bizarre because it's their ship. It's not Kryptonian air, is it? It's the Earth's atmosphere. So I don't know whether it's supposed to be some compressed air that's on the ship. I'm not sure.
I guess if we get a bit Star Trek about it, they'll have within the spaceship, they'll have their own atmosphere. And it'll be sealed in a vacuum or something. So it's probably that, isn't it?
Yeah, and obviously, he KO'd Superman, and we get this whole thing about the world engine. He's not just going to leave Earth. They actually want to take over Earth because Earth's atmosphere is very similar to what Kryptonian, Krypton is, and Zod wants to create Krypton again through Earth, and the only way he can do it is by destroying it. So it's sort of, it's a double bluff by Zod, and he's trying to get Kal-El Clark on board to sort of go with him and rule everything, and he doesn't want to fight him. He knows he's powerful, Superman as such, so he doesn't want that conflict with him. But we all know that never happens, Dave, because Superman's got the conscience. He's a human being, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah. And so this is, I guess, this bit, and some interesting visuals, and again, I just can't help but feel it's just a little bit of style over substance. I mean, do you ever see that sucker punch that Snyder did?
No.
So it's very stylish to look at. And, there's lots of pretty young ladies in very short little skirts running around doing martial arts and stuff. Should be absolutely in my wheelhouse. But I've literally watched it the once. And it was just an awful movie. And I just couldn't help but think back to that when, he's getting sucked in by the skulls and everything into the floor. And some of it looked great. But again, I'm just falling asleep at this point. It's just dull.
Yeah.
But we get the whole idea that, the codex that they've been looking for that Jor-El had stolen, it's not actually, it's not a physical object, that's what they've been looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, because
it is in Kal-El's DNA now.
Yeah, because, and the only thing I got out of that, Dave, because this is the precursor, it's just happened, is you've got the whole fight scenes going on. And they're absolutely, they go to Clark's house, don't they? And they get his mum and throw her about, and they find the ship he was on, and it's like he's not there. So obviously, then Clark comes, and I like it what he does to Zod, because Zod's got his mum in the air, and he sort of thing, and he throws her, and then from nowhere, Clark comes because he saved Lois at this point from the ship. They've come out of the atmosphere. He saved her. She's he says you'll be safe now, and just sort of leaves. And then he realizes something's going on with his mum. So he then goes in and he's like, don't touch my mother or whatever he says. And and they have this, and I love this whole fight scene, Dave. I don't know about you. It's all set around Kansas. It's very reminiscent of Superman 2. Okay, fair enough. I absolutely loved it, because I'll tell you what I loved. I loved the bit where Zod goes up against Superman. He's just beat him up. Zod can't adjust to the Earth's atmosphere because the mask he's got on breaks. Clark's punched it off. He's struggling. The ship comes and takes him. But then he looks up and he's there. The girl and that sort of henchman guy are there in that little Kansas City. Kansas City, Kansas Town as such, and it's just a big battle with the army. I mean, the army should just give it up as a bad day at the office because they just get absolutely decimated. But there's one bit, Dave, I don't know about you, and it always sticks with me as something that I lap up, is the bit when they're all stood around and he comes out and that colonel says to him, like, this guy's not our enemy. And you're sort of thinking, right, things are starting to turn now for him. He's starting to be accepted. I don't know whether that made any difference to you whatsoever, but to me, they're the things I love about Superman, that the character.
Yeah. So I guess I was sort of half jesting about hating it, but not really. So in Superman 2, right, when there's a key moment when we're getting a bit of slapstick. When Zod and Ursa and Nom, they're blowing air and knocking all the civilians over, and actually Superman realizes that this fight is putting all of these civilians in danger. So he does the only thing that he thinks he can do, and that's get out of there. Because if he gets out of there, they're going to stop targeting the civilians, and then the civilians will be safe. So for me, that was Superman. For this one, in these fight scenes, how many people were killed in this brawl? Yeah. I mean, you don't actually see anyone, but the amount of destruction, people have been killed in that, surely.
Yeah, and I think as well, Dave, I suppose thinking further on into the story arc, into Batman v Superman, that's what obviously Bruce Wayne's going against Superman for, isn't he? Because of the destruction to the metropolis and the people and what it did to, they don't allude to it in this. You're very true what you're saying, but I also think that's where they pick up on in Batman v Superman. It's like that thing where people in this day and age are not going to believe that General Zod has just blown 100 people down the street by just blowing his lungs out, sort of thing, like in Superman 2, and nobody gets injured, everyone survives. This is a more realistic, well, if you can call it realistic, what's actually going on, but it's more believable.
I think so I'll take that point. So you could say, well, it's just more realistic, isn't it? But it doesn't seem to cross his mind, to be careful or anything. It's just, they're just plowing into each other like a couple of heavyweight boxers or something, and just ignoring everything and all the people around them. So I guess that didn't sit well with me, to be honest. The other thing, just visually, it just looked like a computer game.
Yeah.
Or animation. It just none of it looked real. And you could say, again, these are aliens, so they move a lot quicker, and so it shouldn't look exactly like, two stuntmen just fighting. Of course it shouldn't, but it just looked, there's the Injustice games that you get with the DC character on the Xbox and the PlayStation. It just looked like that.
Yeah, I think there is one bit in it that it always sticks with me, and I'm watching it now, is when he's fighting against them two guys, that the lady and the other, like the big monster, because he's faceless, he's got like a mask on, and that is, he grabs hold of his cape as he's trying to escape. Now, that bit of CGI, Dave, I've always had a problem with, despite the fact that I like the film, and I'm watching it right now. He's just got up as they're trying to stamp on him on the floor, and he's just grabbed him by the cape, and it looks proper, as I should say, an old Mancunian saying, but it looks proper snide. It doesn't look the best, if I'm being honest. But that's the only bit for me, Dave. I understand what you're saying. I agree, and we get a little bit where you see the old red beam coming from his eyes, don't we? So yeah. I completely understand that, and I agree. There's no explanation for the wanting destruction that's going on. I think that's a great point, if I'm being fair.
And I think, is it this bit or is it the fight scene later with the general and the lady Kryptonian, whatever her name is, the Ursa? I don't know why they didn't just call her Ursa.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's essentially who she's playing. Is going after the general, and she's so quick. She just takes everyone else out, and he's ambling his way, trying to get away. And I'm just like, oh, come on, you're stretching this out. You're trying to keep him alive, I could see, but it's not believable that she doesn't just, within a microsecond just go up and snap his neck. It was just weird. I can't remember if it was this fight scene or the one a bit later. It all kind of merges in my mind.
Yeah. No, no, it's all within one, really, Dave. All this sort of stuff that goes on, and I think
I think the first bit, so Clark kind of gets the upper hand, doesn't he? Because he takes off Zod's little force field thing that he's got, and then all of so he's exposed to the Earth's atmosphere, so all of his senses
there we go.
are then dialed right up, and Clark's been mastering this for the last 33 years, so he kind of gets initially the upper hand, doesn't he? But then I guess it's slightly later than that, when they kick in this world engine and they're trying to increase the density of the Earth. Then Zod's mastered. So what's taken Clark a number of years to master, Zod just gets it, fairly quickly, and so he's now as powerful as Kal-El is.
Don't know. I mean, maybe the only thing I'd say, Dave, is they built Zod up, and like we always said in the other reviews, that a hero is only as good as his enemy. And I think these guys physically are a match for him, all three of them. But one of them, as in Kal-El, can take all three of them out. If that makes, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
So if sense, but
if Kal-El is a 10, then the other three are also 10s. So together they should be a 30.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yes. Yeah. And they're not. And I don't know whether the whole reason that he's got the DNA of Krypton within his body is supposed to depict that gives him an edge over them. I'm not sure. That's the only thing I can think of, because he's not a hardened fighter, is he? He's just like, he's not really had a lot of people to fight with, but he is a match for these sort of super soldiers as such.
Yeah, so if I'm to be unkind again, it's just sloppy. He didn't. Again, Superman 2, he had to outsmart Zod and Co, didn't he?
Yeah.
He didn't actually physically beat them. Whereas here, he's just better than them. So the story needs us to, for our hero to win. So he does. So that's me being unkind. If I'm to be super, super forgiving, I guess I could say, well, because he's been exposed to the Earth's atmosphere for so long, then, he's got full mastery over his powers and his extra strength. Whereas Zod and the Kryptonians, be a good name for a band, that, wouldn't it? They're just experiencing it now, so they're not as powerful. Maybe.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, actually. And then this is all a precursor now to, Zod's found out that it's Clark who's got obviously all this stuff on, and he needs to create the world engine. So they go into sort of the ocean, don't the Indian Ocean, and basically drop the beam, which changes the world engine, which will then change Metropolis and everything else into Krypton. So we have this massive wanton destruction, don't we? Absolute just chaos, and he just absolutely wrecks Metropolis, don't we? While they're fighting everything else, and Superman has got to then try and break this up, so they can't ruin the world and change it into Krypton.
Yeah,
and I like this, Dave. I do like all this at the end. I like the whole fight thing, the whole desperation side of things, and the fact that Superman's now getting the upper hand. He's had a bit of a beating, and they realise, the sort of army and that they need him. He's the only person who can save it as such. He's not as deliberate as Superman 2, like, do you care to step outside sort of thing, but it is there sort of thing.
Yeah, it would have been awesome if he'd have said that. So there was one bit that did sort of make me chuckle. I mean, at this point, it's turned into a Michael Bay movie, hasn't it? You know, just the scale, the epicness of everything. But the bit that made me laugh, there's like a skyscraper that, you've got Lawrence Fishburne there.
Yeah.
And the skyscraper starts to fall towards him. he just turns around and starts running away. And I'm thinking, really, a skyscraper is about to fall in your general direction, and you're going to just jog away from it?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
It just made me laugh.
No, David, I'm not just saying this to go along with you, I promise you. But I did watch it again. And obviously there's the young girl in there who's like the intern of the office, and he's trying to rescue her. And I'm looking at that building and I'm thinking, you know, I wouldn't be as callous as not to leave someone behind if I could rescue him. But you don't run towards it. Let's be honest. He's not Morpheus, is he? It's not the Matrix. We're not going back 20 years. He is Perry White at the end of the day. He's an editor of the Daily Planet. Well, for some reason, he's got the absolute backbone to do this. And he obviously drags one of the workers there who's pretty spineless to give him a hand, because this girl now is now buried under a lot of rubble, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think I agree with that. I do have a slight problem with that, thinking it's not really believable that he would do that.
Yeah.
So the world engine's in full force. Clark, destroys the world engine, and then Zod absolutely just goes maniacally crazy because he's ruined everything now. He's not only destroyed all Zod's sort of henchmen and every henchwomen as well. It's now basically Superman v Zod, because Zod's got to now come down and kill Kal-El because he's just ruined everything.
Yeah,
they can't create Krypton again, which is what. I must admit, Dave, it does give Zod a bit more of a layer than just a disgruntled prisoner, as in the Terrence Stamp. But the Terrence Stamp Zod, he's a million times better than this Michael Shannon version, I must admit.
Yeah, I think, Zod is Terrence Stamp, isn't he? But, to give him a bit more depth, and like I said at the top of the podcast, I think, or the top of the review, his motivation is a bit more believable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas, Terrence Stamp Zod he just wants power. He's just power hungry. So, whereas this one, he does, you can see he's doing it for what he thinks are the right reasons. The fact that he's willing to commit mass genocide, to wipe out an entire species, to recreate Krypton is just, it's an inconvenient side note to that. But he just wants to, create a planet so that his people can carry on. Yeah,
I do. I think a lot of the fighting's brilliant, Dave. And we get a bit now. Now, we know the tone of the film. We've seen Jor-El was stabbed at the start, wasn't he, by Zod? He's killed him. We've seen a couple of other things within the film that are very much a Batman in tone, as in a bit more dark, a bit more sort of realistic death scenes and fight scenes than what we've seen in anything that Superman's had on the screen before. But the main controversy of this film, Dave, and it always has done for a lot of people, is how Superman kills Zod. Now they obviously have a battle and it goes through Metropolis a bit, and we get a little bit, which I know is a throwback to the General Zod fight in Superman 2, is Zod spins Superman round like Superman does to Zod in the original Christopher Reeve films, and he throws him, doesn't he, through all the buildings. Now that is a direct throwback, a little call, even though it's reversing the characters. But yeah, he's basically, they have a fight, and Perry White and that are all conveniently there, aren't they? And Lois Lane. And he's going to kill these humans. Zod knows his weakness is these humans, and he's firing out their brains out of his eyes. And Superman's got him in a bit of a full Nelson sort of bear hug situation and a bit of a headlock. And the only way to do it is to snap his neck. And he just has enough, doesn't he? And just screams out and just snaps his neck. And Zod he's dead. But that created so much controversy, Dave, which I don't know why. I think it's a bit more believable. You've had wanton destruction going on throughout the whole film. He's not just going to put him in Kryptonian handcuffs, is he, and put him in a prison somewhere?
The reason is that I think killing Zod is okay if you've got the John Williams score playing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So people kind of forget the fact that, Zod died off camera, didn't he? But, when Superman 2, when he crushed his hand, he took all his powers away, crushed his hand, and then threw him, and then he fell down in a chasm. But the fact that he's disappeared in all the smoke and dry ice and whatever means, and you've got the John Williams score playing, it's like, that's nice, isn't it? Superman's got his powers back. Whereas here, it's obviously right in your face, graphically, disposing of Zod. So I think that's why, people probably didn't even think any further, You know, once Zod disappears, they don't think of anything else happening to him. Or Nom, you know, falling down as well, and Ursa, you know, getting punched and them falling down. You know, they've all fallen to their deaths.
Yeah.
But the fact that you see it is probably just what set people off. But
and I must say, Dave, one thing I have got a massive problem with in this film, I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying the film. This is probably about my 5th or 6th watch of the film all the way through. There's no way ever in a Superman film you do not have that John Williams score. I do not care. Hans Zimmer's score is fantastic. The desperation in this little Superman Phoenix crate is fantastic. But when there's a bit where Superman's got to redeem himself, that he's got to be there. I mean, they bring it into the Justice League, don't they, a couple of times. It's just there slightly in the background, but the fact it's never used.
It's as if it's begrudgingly used, though, isn't it? And can you imagine Star Wars? I mean, Star Wars is the same. You know, they brought it back years and years later. All right, it's not a reboot. Just use it.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. It's Superman. I mean, if Superman Returns to use it, Dave, he rescues that plane that they're all on, which ends up in the baseball ground, doesn't it? I know that's a bit far-fetched to say the least, irrespective of what, you know, the whole Superman ideology in the real world, but it works, and he uses the music for the right things. And I just think you're totally right. It's just like they were saying, we're smarter than that. We don't need to rely on a catchy theme to say this is a Superman film. But I think that would have been just enough to tip it over the edge with a few people, if I'm being honest. Them little things are what make people nod and smile in a cinema. And I just think they would, like you said, they were just trying to be too clever.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it is a great piece of music. And, you know, you're right. When you're watching a movie, you don't necessarily think of the score a lot of the time, but your emotions are triggered by the music. And I think I agree. I think it's a massive mistake not to use it.
Exactly. Not to over the point, but for me, Dave, Superman 2, the fact that all he does is crush General Zod's hand would have been absolutely useless if there wasn't the music. But he kneels in front of him, because the whole premise is kneel before Zod.
Yeah.
And then you get the music when he's shaking, you know, son of Jor-El, our jailer, kneel before Zod. That's so effective.
I've got the goosebumps just thinking about it now. Just thinking of that music just swelling out, you know, and he crushes his hand and you get the ooh, and you get, it's just great, you know. Like you say, I don't know if it would have been totally cricket to do that while he's just snapping Zod's neck.
Yeah.
But, you know, using it sparingly throughout the movie, I think would have been the right choice. But I tell you what, I think for me, the weird thing that I thought about this scene, not the fact that he's got to kill him, all right, he needs a terrible choice. I think, again, the family didn't actually seem to be trapped. They just seemed to be static. It's like, run away, you know? Yeah. But if Zod moves his head a little bit to the right, then, you know, he'll cut this family in half. The way Superman is holding his neck, he has to snap it by moving his head to the right.
Yeah.
And he's got the old eye beams, you know, going out. So I thought, if he'd have actually done that, you know, the firing out the lasers would only stop, presumably, when his neck's snapped. But Clark, or Kal-El, Superman, when he moves his head to the right, he's just killed that family himself.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I just thought, just snap it the other way. You know, does no one notice this?
No, you're right. I think as well, Dave, the next scene as well, I totally agree with that, by the way. This is the only bit that really grates on me in the whole film. I must admit, I know I've picked a couple of little things out, but is this idea that he gets a job done. He says to his mum, like, I want to be closer to the action sort of thing so I can hear things and all this. And it comes to him like wearing, you know, he's obviously not wearing a suit. It's not a Christopher Reeve job where he's got like an old style suit on, but he's got like, you know, jeans on and a sort of lumberjack type shirt. And he's dressed that casual. He gets a blazer on and he walks into a lift, right? Then puts his glasses on.
Yeah.
And for me, this man has probably been on every single news publication, internet. Within this world, he's been on phones, he's been on everything you can think of. Everyone knows he's Clark Kent, but he then starts a job at the Daily Planet, and nobody in the lift or wherever he's come from has noticed that Superman stood next to him. And I'm just like, forget the disguise of the glasses. We know that's just like a bit of a joke Superman thing. That's run and run and run. I really had a problem with it. I'm thinking, I just don't believe that it's supposed to be realistic, but yet you've done nothing to suggest you're going to give a nod to the old school Superman stuff at all. As we've just mentioned, the music, anything else. There's no foregoing the fact that no one realizes he's Superman. There's no hiding the fact who he is, but all of a sudden you're going to throw it in at the end, and I'm thinking, nah, I'm not having that.
Yeah, and I noticed a bit with the glasses as well. I'm like, really? But then even when it shows him with the glasses, and again, I'm sure I've called this out a number of times, I've no idea how exactly Christopher Reeve pulled off that duality. Because when he's Clark Kent, he does... It's not just the glasses, it's his body, it's his posture, it's everything. When Henry Cavill puts his glasses, well, Superman in glasses. It still looks exactly like him, and I'm not having that anyone else sees anything different, you know. And again, I don't know how Christopher Reeve did it, but I could buy the fact that people could look at him and not realize it's the same person as Superman.
Yeah, I agree.
Henry Cavill, it's just Henry Cavill in glasses.
And I think I don't necessarily, obviously it's not him, but like you said, this is the only bit where I could honestly say that's sloppy. You can't go back on something that you've tried to move away from the whole 2 hours, 20 minutes, and then throw in a bit of slapstick. How has no one noticed Superman? Because that's the whole point of the Christopher Reeve stuff is you're sort of thinking outside the fourth wall. You know full well that in a real world, you could tell that he's Superman. If that was real, you know, someone's hiding identity, a set of glasses isn't going to change it, but it works because they sort of play on it tongue in cheek. They've not played on this one bit in this film, and then they throw it at the end. And I just think it's cheap. I must admit, I think it's just a bit of a cheap little thing at the end that doesn't work. That's a whole new bit of the film where I just don't think it works.
Yeah, but obviously I guess they're setting us up now for Man of Steel 2, you know, because he's got his job and all is, you know, so the public know about Superman, Clark Kent's working at the Daily Planet. Now everything's in place. Our origin story is finished.
Yeah, and I think having watched the films afterwards, like the Batman v Superman and the Justice League, they are nothing like Man of Steel or the direction it's going, which I want to get into in the review in a sec. But yeah, I don't know. Strange. I think we should go into the review, Dave.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Now, Dave, it's definitely not me this week.
It is me. Okay, so let me be abstract for a second, right? So, as I like to be occasionally, I remember saying, I think it was probably when Star Wars 7 came out, and I watched that, and I remember discussing with some of my friends that actually now, the where movies are, I can't see, if you've got the money, I can't actually see how you can make a bad movie.
Yeah,
because if you spend it frivolously on the wrong things, okay, I can see that. But if you invest properly in the right directors, the right writers, you have the right talent working behind the scenes. Forget the actors for a second. It's all behind the scenes stuff. If you invest and bring in the top talent in the world to work on your movie, actually, I can't see how can you make a bad movie now, because there's so many examples of great movies, and they're analyzed and dissected, so you know what makes a really good movie, and you know what makes a bad one as well. And like I say, you're not taking, me and you, there you go, there's $100 million, go and make a movie. These are experienced people. It's a top talent in the industry. So you can't, from now on, you cannot make a bad movie. Well, I think when I watch this again, I think, actually, I think you can. So, again, they've got a lot of top talent working on this. And when I watched it for the first time in the cinema, I didn't hate it. But on this rewatch, I found it really, really tough to get through. I just found, the first half just utterly dull. It was all style over substance. The second half, when it kicks into the action, well, it probably wasn't the second half, but when it gets into the cartoon fighting, again, it was just all it just didn't look real. I wasn't really bought into it. I didn't really feel that there was any peril. There's lots and lots of product placement, and I just finished it, and I thought, God, I hated that. I'm never going to watch that again, ever. So I've rarely done this. And, there are some good things in it. I think I don't subscribe to the fact that Kal-El is not a good Superman. I think he is. And actually, I still think, I hope they can come to some sort of agreement so he can carry on and the stories get better. But for me, I just can't see anywhere else. I was thinking I was going to send this to Hell's Kitchen, but no, it's going to the Phantom Zone.
Oh my word!
Straight in there.
Oh my word! Right, well, hold my beer, Dave, as they say. For me, I came into this totally blinded by my love of Superman. Everything about the film. I watched it again the other day. Absolutely loved it, Dave. And I in my mind, I'm thinking, Batman Begins. Like I give it an Asgard dinner, like saying it's an origin film. And I honestly believe that it's an origin film up there with Batman Begins. There's a few problems, like we said, the music and that. I honestly think watching it back, it's an origin film. But what's happened is, because Batman v Superman isn't about Superman standalone film, and they've done a bit of a crossover between the two characters, and we've had the Justice League. I personally, Dave, as much as I love the Avengers and stuff, I don't want to see Batman and Superman in the same film. I want to see them on their own. I think it's pointless doing single films now after this Man of Steel, because it's just an absolute waste of time. There's no way Ben Affleck can pull that off as a standalone Batman film, because you're always going to be wondering if they're going to bring someone in. I mean, even going back to, Spider-Man Homecoming and that, they still have to have Iron Man in there. Like as Ant-Man, you've got, a couple of characters on the peripherals, haven't we? We've got Falcon there and that. I know obviously it's a bit of a fight scene and stuff, but they've always got to throw someone in there. For me, I'd rather have the worlds coexist, maybe within the same world, but you never see them. The little nods to Wayne Enterprises that are in this film, and that with the satellite dish and the lorry that gets destroyed and that. That's all I want. I don't need everything else. So I think the films that have come after this have done it a disservice. But again, it's not Superman 2. It's not something where, if I had a choice between Man of Steel and Superman 2, I'm always going to go back to the Christopher Reeve films, Dave. And I just think the music not being in it just totally ruins it for me completely. It always knocked me. And a couple of little things, like I said, the guy in the lorry driver who has a crack at him, the truck driver. I know it's not a major scene, but it's all stuff to sort of bring Superman up to who he is, and that sort of indestructibility of his character. And I do like it. I like the scene, I like the CGI. There's a couple of things I've picked up in the review. There's a couple of beats I'm not happy with. But for me, Dave, it's going to Atlantis. It's not going to be an Asgard. There's a couple of things, as we've said the podcast, and I alluded to it earlier, there's a few things that stick out that are just not right. And yeah, it's Atlantis for me. Great film, but what an opposite score to you. That's great. Now, finally, we've got something we totally disagree on. I like it.
And I think, you know, they've obviously gone into this with the Nolan trilogy in mind, haven't they? And
Yes.
they've tried to replicate that, and they've sort of said, right, they took Batman and they made it all dark and gritty, but Batman has no powers. You can do that. For me, you know, to do that with Superman, it's for me, it's nowhere near as good. And I think they could have afforded to make this an hour and a half movie, and maybe the pacing wouldn't seem as off then. You know, a bit less style over substance in the first half, and a bit less cartoon fighting in the second. But yeah, I thought going into this, well, certainly after I'd watched the movie, I thought, oh, Chris is going to hate me after this.
No,
definitely no. I'm teasing. But I knew we'd be very, very different, and I did wonder if we'd be absolute opposite ends of the scale. I thought, I wonder if you go to Asgard and I'll go to the Phantom Zone.
No, I think maybe because we're doing the podcast, it has knocked off a point, because there is a couple of things, like, say, the Penny White with the building falling towards him. You'd just be out there, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You would. But no, great film and great reviewing, Dave. I love it. Now, obviously, just before we go, Dave, and we get into our plugs, I want to thank our sponsors again. Studio.com. So get yourselves over to www.studio.com. If you like any of the headsets or musical peripherals that they sell, put in code Comics in Motion Podcast 15, as in 15 at the end, and you get 15% off all orders. Now, Dave, what plugs have you got for us, mate?
Well, as always, I'm going to plug the Grassroots Coachcast. So we had an extended holiday over the summer, but we were back on it last week, and then we'll record another one this weekend. So last week we were just kind of doing a welcome back. We've started the new season. Next one, I think Ben's had a few run-ins, so it's Ben's going to be on his soapbox, and I'll just be sat back with my popcorn laughing, I think. So I'm looking forward to recording that one. But if you're interested in youth soccer coaching or youth football coaching, get yourself across there and give that a listen. And what about yourself, Chris?
Well, Dave, just a quick note, your last episode of Grassroots, before I throw a couple of plugs in. Ben, if any of his parents are listening, they're going to have him. So if anyone's not listening to Dave and Ben's podcast, please get over there, because the last episode's a belter. Because I'm hoping if you did have a phone-in section, Dave, you might have a couple of people coming on and giving Ben a bit of stick. So I'm really looking forward to this week's episode. It's well worth a listen, guys. So get over to the Grassroots Coachcast. So we've got our football one, which is the Chat Footy podcast. We're going to be recording again tomorrow, which, judging by what's happened already this weekend, Dave, as a Manchester United fan, I really am not looking forward to it. Now, you think Ben's going to be on his soapbox in the Grassroots one? Oh, dear. As I said before, hold my beer. I will be on my soapbox, because we've just been beaten 3-1 by West Ham. So get over, guys. It's a great podcast. Dave and Ben are both Liverpool fans. I'm a United fan. So we have plenty of banter and give each other stick, which I seem to be taking a lot of at the moment. So it's at Chat Footy on Twitter, and then get over to iTunes, Chat Footy podcast. And that's it, Dave, for this week for me.
Fantastic. Cheers, Chris. I really enjoyed that. And I'm going to say, how are you going to see us out this week?
Oh, very good, David. Very good.
Like what I did there.
Yeah, I like it. I'm sure you stole that line from someone. All I can say to you is, Man of Steel, great episode, but what happened to the trunks? Bye.
Hey. What? Okay. Or you will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. I will find him!
What's the S stand for?
It's not an S. In my world, it's hope.
Well, here it's an S. How about super?